energy. That in fact, we should be providing tax credits for people.
All
to be able
right,
to their
back
homes turn to solar
live.
power.
How's
There's all kinds of
everybody
folks out
doing?
here, right here in
Nobody's
California.
probably here
We're
yet,
now on the verge of
but-
having batteries that are about the size of the
Where
top of
the
this
hell?
podium.
There we
that
go.
you can store energy when in fact the wind isn't blowing and the sun isn't shining. We have enormous opportunities. For example, you talk about would we relocate people who in fact were in a position where they lost their home. We have to not rebuild to the standard that existed before when we talk about when we come in and help people. We have to rebuild to the standard that exists today. For example, we shouldn't build another new highway in America that doesn't have charging stations on it. We have an opportunity to put 550,000 charging stations so that we own the electrical vehicle market, creating millions of jobs for people installing them, as well as making sure that we own the electric vehicle market. There's so many things we can do, and we have to make sure we explain it to those people who are displaced that their skills are going to be needed for the new opportunities.
Thank you, Vice President Biden. Senator Sanders.
Tim, in all due respect, your question misses the mark. It is not an issue of relocating people in towns. The issue now is whether we save the planet for our children and our grandchildren.
Save the planet.
The issue, as you should know,
Bernie is
what the
actually
scientists
Captain
are
Planet.
telling us is they have
A geriatric
underestimated
Captain
the threat
Planet.
and severity of climate change. You're talking about the Paris Agreement, that's
Climate
fine.
change.
Ain't enough. We have got to, and I've
Climate
introduced
change.
legislation to do this, declare a national emergency.
A
The United
national
States has got
emergency.
to lead the world, and maybe, just maybe, instead of spending 1.8 trillion a year globally on weapons of destruction,
1.8
maybe
trillion.
an American president, i.e. Bernie Sanders, can lead the world. Instead of spending weapon money to kill each other, maybe we pool our resources and fight our common enemy,
Thank you, Senator
which is
Sanders.
climate change.
Thank you, Senator Sanders.
Yeah, I saw that, hun.
A new question to you, Senator Warren. Many of
Just
our
gonna play
Western
some games
allies
while we
rely
watch
heavily
this
on
shit.
nuclear
So
energy because it's
if I
efficient,
occasionally I'll be looking at chat because I want to hear what people have to
and
say.
many
But
climate experts believe that it's
yeah,
impossible to
some
realize
fun
your
visuals
goal of
while we
net
go
zero
through the
emissions by the year 2050 without
anal
utilizing
raping that is the
nuclear
DNC
energy.
these days.
So can you have it both ways on this issue?
So I see it right now as we've got to get the carbon. We've got to stop putting more carbon.
gotta
into
get the
air,
carbon!
Carbon out of the air and out of the water. And that means that we need to keep some of our nuclear in place. I will not build more nuclear. I want to put the energy, literally, and the money and the resources behind clean energy and by increasing by tenfold what we
Just
put
look at her
into
face. It's
science,
just like
what we put
constantly.
into research and development. We need to do what we do best, and that is innovate our
Ooh,
way
Lucy.
out of this problem and be
Lucy,
a world leader.
oh.
But understand, the biggest climate problem we face is the politicians in Washington.
Oh, you mean like
Say
you?
the right thing, but continue.
The politicians like
Money
you who've
from
spent
the oil industry, continue.
years
Bow down to the lobbyists,
doing
to the
nothing?
lawyers, to the think
Focusing
tanks,
on
to the
stupid
thought
things like
for
a
experts.
baloney
America
impeachment as opposed
understands
to
that we've got to make change, and we're running out of time.
effecting
That
change.
Climate change threatens every living thing on this planet. But getting Congress to act, they just don't want to hear it. And if we don't attack the corruption first, if we don't attack the corruption head on, then we're not going to be able to make the changes we need to make on climate, on gun safety, on drug pricing, on all of the big problems that face us.
Thank you.
We need a Washington that doesn't just work for the rich and the powerful. We need one that works for our families.
Thank you, Senator. Senator
Got
Klobuchar,
him.
and then I'd like to bring in Senator Yang and Mr. Steyer
Yeah,
for follow-up.
well, I wanted to add to what Elizabeth said. So the way we tackle this corruption is by winning big in this election. And the way we take on climate change in a big way is by, yes, talking about what's happening on the coast, as I just did, but also talking about what's happening in the Midwest, where I'm from. It's not flyover country to me.
Uh-oh,
I
guys.
live there.
Uh-oh,
And
guys.
what we are seeing there is unprecedented flooding. We're seeing an increase, 50% increase in homeowners insurance over the last few years. And when we make these changes, we have to make clear to people that when we put a price on carbon, that money is going
got
to come
me.
back to those areas where people are going to be hurt where jobs are going to change, and to make them whole with their energy bills. When you make the
Exactly,
case
Cook.
that, you bring in the
Like you
Midwestern votes,
knowingly
one
lying
day,
about
and I think
being
the best
Native
way to do it
American
is
and
by putting
using
someone
that
at
to
the
your
top of the ticket
political and
from the
financial
Midwest.
advantage.
Mr. Yang, 45 seconds on the issue of nuclear energy.
Well, first, we should obviously be paying to relocate Americans away from places that are hit by climate change. We're already doing it. We relocated a town in Louisiana that became uninhabitable because the sea levels rose. And we know that town is not alone. That's playing out in coastal areas around the country. The question is, do you leave that town on its own to fend for itself, or do you come together as a country and say, we need to protect our people from climate change? Part of my plan is literally called Move People to Higher Ground, because that's what we need
Is
to
that
do.
why people
And
like
that's literal and figurative. If you're in California,
rich
it's
people are
forest
still buying
fires
beachfront
and
property
forest
because they
management.
know that it's going to be
On nuclear
underwater in
power,
10 years,
I agree
right?
with the research. We need to have everything on the table in a crisis situation, which this is. Other countries have had success with nuclear.
It's not at a stage in the United States where it's competitive on price. It has a lot of risks to it in terms of disasters, and we have no ability to store the toxins that come out of it and last 100,000 years. We actually have the technology that we need. It's called wind and solar and batteries. So in fact, what we need to do, we can do. We've got to stop taking a look at this as something that we can't do, because we can do this. And we can do it in a way that rebuilds this country on an
We
accelerated
can do a lot of
basis,
things.
creates millions of union jobs, and we come
And
at
I
it
mean,
from
I
the
agree.
standpoint of
Nuclear.
environmental justice.
Nuclear's great.
This is our
Wind and
greatest
solar,
opportunity to
I'm still
reinvent
not
this
convinced
country,
it's there yet. It's
to
a
actually
good
take on
supplement.
the biggest challenge in history
Why not? Like
and
fill
succeed
empty
together.
fields of
We gotta
desert
pull the
with
country
solar
together,
panels.
remove all this
Sure.
partisanship.
Get
Let's take on
you know,
the
just a
biggest
little bit of
challenge in
subsidy on
history
having
and
home
succeed
solar
together
panels,
as a
building
nation.
solar
That's
panels,
what pulls people
vertical
together.
farms.
Thanks, Ken. Vice President Biden,
Yes.
you've been reassuring voters that things will return to normal once President Trump leaves office. That
Once he he's not leaving
office.
office. Sorry, bud.
The Biden administration. But given everything that you have seen from current Republicans, what evidence is there that things will
Exactly.
change?
Climate change, because
I didn't
climate
say
change
return
is
to
climate
normal.
changing.
Normal's not enough. Normal, in fact, we have to move beyond normal, whether it's healthcare, the environment, whatever it is. We have to build
Ugh,
on what
I'm not
we
a
had
good
started
widow.
in our
If anybody knows
administration,
this
and that's
game,
been interrupted very badly.
I'm not a good widow.
Number two, with
Not a
Trump
good
out of the
sniper in
way,
this
it's
game
not
at
gonna
all.
change things in a fundamental way. But what it will
Aw,
do
thanks,
is it'll
Alex.
mean that we're in a position where he's not going to be able to intimidate the base. His base is not going to intimidate those half a dozen Republicans.
Yeah, I
we
keep
need
seeing
in
my
order to-
stream
I
keeps
refuse
dipping
to
down
accept
in the
notion,
bandwidth, but
as some on this stage do,
it's
that we
actually
can
holding
never,
this time,
never
so we'll
get to
see.
a place where we have cooperation again. If that's the case, we're dead as a country. We need to be able to reach consensus. And if anyone has reason to be angry with the Republicans and not want to cooperate, it's me. The way they've attacked me,
Aw,
my son,
poor
and my
Mousy.
family, I have no love. But the fact is, we have
Oh, come
to
on,
be
kill
able
her.
to get things done. And when we can't convince them, we go out and beat them like we did in the 2018 election
Okay, let's
in red
push.
states
Let's
and in
push,
purple
push, push,
states.
push, push.
Thank you, Mr. Biden.
Push, push,
Mr.
push,
Yang,
push, push.
I want to switch topics to you, Mr. Yang. A new question. The Democratic Party relies on Black, Hispanic, and Asian voters, but you are the only candidate of color on the stage tonight,
Only
as the
candidate of
entire
color.
field
He's like that
remains
pasty
overwhelmingly
yellow
white. What
color.
message do you think this
Like that
sends?
inside of a banana color.
It's both
Person
an
of
honor
color.
and
Fuck off.
disappointment to
Best
be the
person
lone
for the
candidate of
job.
color on the stage tonight.
Let's have some
I miss Kamala,
meritocracy,
I
not
miss
worry
Cory,
about,
but I think they'll
oh,
be back.
is he black? Is he white? Is he yellow? Is he red? Go fuck yourself.
I grew up the son of immigrants, and I had many racial epithets used against me as a kid.
So did I, and I'm white.
Black and Latinos have something
Well,
much more powerful
visibly
working
white.
against them than words. They have numbers. The average net worth of a black household only 10% that of a white household. For Latinos, it's 12%. If you're a black woman, you're 320% more likely to die from
Ow.
complications in childbirth.
That wasn't nice.
These are the numbers that define race in our country. And the question is, why am I the lone candidate of color on this stage? Fewer than 5% of Americans donate to political campaigns. You know what you need to donate to political campaigns? Disposable income. The way we fix it
Okay. Okay, that's good.
Is we take Martin Luther King's message of a guaranteed minimum income, a freedom dividend of $1,000 a month for all Americans.
Shilling
I
your shit.
guarantee
Okay.
If we had a freedom
Whatever.
dividend of $1,000 a month,
I
would
like
not be
it, but
the
I don't
only
like
candidate
it,
of color on
and
the
it
stage
can be
tonight.
discussed.
Thank you, Mr. Yang. Senator Sanders, I do want to put the same question to you, Senator Sanders. What message do you think?
To that question, but I wanted to get back to the issue of climate change for a moment, because I do believe
Got you.
this is the existential issue.
Senator, with all respect, this question is about race. Can you answer the question as it was asked?
Oh, get him!
Because people of color, in fact, are going to be the people suffering most if we do not deal with climate change. And
Why?
by the way, we
Why?
have an
How?
obligation up here, if there
Because
are not
people in
any of
China
our
are fucking up their own
brothers
goddamn
and sisters up here to speak
environment?
about an economy in which African Americans are exploited, where black women die 3 times at a higher rates than white women, where we have a criminal justice system which is racist and broken.
It's racist.
Unfortunately,
It's
made
racist.
up of African Americans and
The only
Latinos
person,
and
the
Native
biggest
Americans
racist on that
who
stage
are
is
in
Bernie
jail.
fucking
So
Sanders.
we need an economy that focuses on the needs.
We need
of
an economy
exploited
for the
people,
Gibbs. We need to
that
give
is
the
the
bleeps
African
money.
American
We need to give black people money.
Thank you, Amna.
So they'll like me and keep voting
Here
for
in
me.
California, people who identify as Hispanic, Black, Asian, or multiracial represent a majority of the population, outnumbering white residents. The United States is expected to be majority non-white within a generation. What do you say to white Americans who are uncomfortable with the idea of becoming a racial minority, even if you don't share their concerns?
They are a racial minority.
Say
Look at the
this is
globe.
America. You're looking at it. And we are not going to be able to succeed in the world if we do not invite everyone to be part of our economy. Our Constitution says that we strive for a more perfect union. Well, that's what we are doing right now. And to me, that means, one, that everyone can vote, and that includes our communities of color. This action that's been taken by this president and his people and his governors all over the country is wrong. They have made it hard for African Americans to vote, as one court said, discriminated with surgical precision. What would I do? As one
I was
of
too
the
busy looking
leaders
at the
on
screen
voting
and I
in
got
the
shot
US
with a
Senate,
rocket
one,
launcher.
stop the purging. As Stacey Abrams said, you know, you do not stop having your right to assemble if you don't go to a meeting for a year. Because you don't go to a church or a synagogue or a mosque for 3 months, you don't lose your right to worship. You shouldn't lose your right to vote. I would pass, as president, my bill to register every kid in this country when they turn 18 to vote. That would make all of these discriminatory actions in these states go away, and I would stop the gerrymandering. In addition to the agenda.
That's
of
not freedom, though. I think that it's a responsibility to vote,
because as Martin
but you
Luther
shouldn't be
King said,
forced to.
what good
And you
is it
shouldn't
to
be forced into
integrate a
some
lunch
government
counter
database that
can't
you
afford a
don't
hamburger?
contractually enter
Let's
into.
now turn to the issue of
Like
foreign
having a
policy
driver's
in the Middle
license.
East. Senator Sanders. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo recently declared that the United States believes
You're entering into that
Israeli
contract to
settlements
have
in
a
the West
certain
Bank do not violate
ID.
international law. That broke decades-long U.S. precedent. How would you respond to Israeli expansion of settlements? Would you link that to foreign aid to Israel?
Israel.
Israel has, and I say this as somebody who lived in
Shit, my
Israel as a
FPS
kid,
keeps choking. I wonder if it's
Jewish.
OBS. If I just
Israel
have too
has
much
the
shit
right
going
not
on.
only to exist, but to exist in peace and security. But what U.S. foreign policy must be about is not just being pro-Israel. We must be pro-Palestinian as well.
Pro-Palestinian, okay.
And whether, in my view, we must understand that right now in Israel we have leadership under Netanyahu, who has recently, as you know, been indicted for bribery, who in my view is a racist. What we need is a level.
Everybody's a racist except me. I'm Bernie Sanders. Everybody's a racist.
Addresses the terrible crisis in Gaza, where 60 or 70% of the young people are unemployed. So what my foreign policy will be about is human rights, is democracy,
Human rights.
is bringing people together, in a peaceful way, trying to negotiate agreements,
Bringing people
not
together at the
endless
barrel of a
wars
gun.
with trillions of dollars of expenses.
Thank you, Senator. Buttigieg.
What we are seeing in the Middle East and around the world are the consequences of this president's failure, this president's refusal to lead. It's particularly disturbing in the case of Israel.
Yeah, exactly,
He
Cook.
has infused
They have their own
domestic
fucking
violence,
government.
making US
I mean, if you want to talk about
forces
what
in order to
foreign aid you have,
interfere
well, let's see.
with Israeli
One of the
domestic
biggest
policy,
threats to the West is
acting as
kind
though
of in the
that
Middle
somehow
East, and they
makes
happen to
them
be the
pro-Israel and
closest,
pro-Jewish,
most reliable
while
ally of the
welcoming
West.
white nationalists into the White House.
They're the only
But it's not only in the Middle
remote
East that we see the
democracy there.
consequences of the disappearance of U.S. leadership. We see among our allies and among our adversaries, case after case.
Now, if there wants to be a debate on how much, if any, aid we send to Israel, how much money we give them, okay, sure. But I believe at its root cause, it's, you know, a quid pro quo. You give us intel, you act as our operatives, you give us a safe port in the Middle East, and in exchange, we're going to make sure that your military is well stocked. Okay. After all, they have mandatory military service because they're in danger
But it can't be just
all the
any
time.
It has to be one that is actually living up
They're
to
not
the values that
invading
make us
their
who we are.
neighbors. In
Supporting
fact,
peace,
they've been invaded by
supporting
their
democracy,
neighbors. I mean, you
supporting
want to
human
get
rights, and supporting
into a discussion
stability.
about Palestine? Well, you know, we can talk about that, but I'm talking about the other countries, the
Thank you,
actual
Mayor Buttigieg.
physical countries
Senator
that are
Warren.
around there.
President Obama pledged to close the detention camp at Guantanamo Bay, but could not. 40
Gitmo.
prisoners remain there. Last year, U.S. taxpayers paid $540 million to
40
keep Guantanamo
terrorists.
open. Would you pledge to finally close the detention facility? And if elected, how will you do it?
Yes, it's time to close this detention facility. It not only costs us money, it is an international embarrassment. We have to be an America that lives our values every single day. We can't be an America that stands up and asks people to fight alongside us as we did with the Kurds in fighting ISIS, and then turn around in the blink of a tweet and say that we're turning our backs on the people.
Oh, come
who
on. How
stand
did that
beside
kill
us.
me?
After that, who wants to be an ally of the United States? We
Lots of
have to be
people.
an America that understands the difference and recognizes the difference between our allies, the people who will work alongside us, and the dictators who would do us harm. And we need to treat our allies better than we treat the dictators. That needs to be our job as an America. We have the finest military on earth. All three of my brothers served. And we have people on this stage who have served, and I'm deeply grateful for that. Our military is strong and important, but we need to be an America that relies on our State Department, that relies on diplomacy, that relies on our economic power, and that relies on working together with the rest of the world to build a world that is sustainable environmentally and economically for everyone.
Thank you, Senator Warren. Vice President Biden, why couldn't you close Guantanamo Bay? Why couldn't the Obama administration close
We
Guantanamo
attempted
Bay?
to close Guantanamo Bay, but you have to have congressional authority to do it. They kept it open. And the fact is that we, in fact, think it's the greatest, it is an advertisement to creating terror. Look, what we have done around the world in terms of keeping Guantanamo open, or what Trump has done by no longer being an honest broker in Israel, there's no solution for Israel other than a two-state solution. It does not exist. It's not possible to have a Jewish state in the Middle East without there being a two-state solution. And he has played to all the same fears and all the prejudices.
But when
that
they
exist
keep
in
electing
this country and in Israel,
and
Even
appointing
Netanyahu and I know one
their
another
leaders
well.
to be
He knows
terrorists.
What he's doing is outrageous. What we do is we have to put pressure constantly on the Israelis to move to a two-state solution, not withdraw physical aid from them in terms of their security.
Okay,
And lastly,
okay, I can get
I
behind
think
that, Joe.
Senator
Let's get
Warren's
back to the
correct. We
negotiating
led
table.
by
Yeah.
not
You know what?
just
I don't
talking
agree
about
with a
power, but the
two-state
power
solution.
of
I
our
think they should just
example.
integrate
And the
them.
example we're demonstrating now is horrible. It's hurting us badly.
Thank you, Vice President Biden. Judy?
I keep dying because I keep
I wanna
looking
turn
over
to
to
another part
chat.
of the world, and that's China. Mayor Buttigieg, you have said that you think China presents more of a challenge than do your fellow candidates believe. The U.S. clearly wants China's cooperation on human rights, on on climate change, on
And the cockroaches too.
North
Noof.
Korea, on terrorism, and yet Americans are appalled by China's record on human rights, including the detention of over 1 million Muslim Uyghurs. Should the U.S., is my question, do more than
Keek
protest
Uyghurs?
and issue sanctions? Should the U.S., for example, boycott the 2022 Beijing Olympics?
What the fuck?
I think that any tool ought to be on the table, especially diplomatic, economic, and social tools like what you're describing. Look, for the president to let it be known that his silence, whether it's on the rounding up of Muslim Uyghurs in Xinjiang, putting them into camps.
Oh, you mean the one guy who's been tough on China and doesn't want to kowtow to China? Yeah, it's his fault.
Let China know that his silence can be purchased is trashing American values. Reality is that there's a lot more to the relationship with China than who's selling more dishwashers. Yes, we need a much smarter trade policy. We also have to acknowledge what's going on over there. The use of technology
What the
for the
fuck?
perfection of dictatorship. That is going to require a stronger than ever response from the
That was
US
great.
in defense
I
of
just got,
democracy.
like,
But when folks out
straight
there
up
standing up for
mollywopped.
democracy hear not a peep from the President of the United States, what message is that sending to the Chinese Communist Party?
I mean, I know some people who are, you know, descended from like they're of Palestinian descent, and they're good people. It's not them, it's the leaders, the people who take the power.
Lead that isolation diplomatically and economically.
Mr. Steyer,
And they
many
fuck it up for
Americans
good
have been
people.
moved in the last months by the protests of the people of Hong Kong. It is Chinese territory, but what would you do as president if the Chinese government moved in militarily?
Look, there is a temptation, particularly for this president, to try and answer that in a bilateral way. The way the United States should be reacting in Hong Kong is by gathering our coalition of democracy and freedom-loving partners and allies to
War.
push back.
War.
In fact, when we're making moral statements around
Is
the
that what
world,
he's saying?
it should
War?
not be
Get his
us
coalition together?
threatening and
I
changing
mean,
the world's
I think that
system.
there should be
It
no
be us
economic
leading
trade with
on a
China if they're going to act
value-driven
like
basis
this.
with the other people who share our values and want to change the world. We actually can't isolate ourselves from China. In fact, we have to
Why
work with
not?
them
Why
as a
can't
friend
you
with people
isolate
who
them
disturb
and
us,
say, well,
who
if
we
you're
disagree
gonna
with, who, in
keep
effect,
being
we
fucking
are
human
linked
rights
to in a world
abusers,
that is
then no, we're not gonna
and
do
in fact,
business with you. We're
if
not
we
gonna.
are going to treat climate as the threat that it is. We are going to have to partner with the
headset's
Chinese.
about to die.
They're going to have to come along with us. They're going to have to trust us, and together we're going to have to solve this problem. So the ability
you,
to say
Mr. Steyer.
it's off the table. We need a good relationship with them, and we're going to have to work with them going forward under all circumstances.
Thank you, Mr. Steyer. Vice President Biden, on China, we now know that China is engaged in an unprecedented military buildup. They have just launched a new aircraft carrier. There are new signs of their disturbing espionage campaign here inside the United States. There are a number of disturbing signs from the Chinese. National security scholars have long warned about the historical precedent that when there's a ruling power and a rising power, there's likely to be a war. Is the U.S. on a collision course with China? What steps could you take as
They're on a
president?
collision course with China, but not for a war. What we have to make clear is that
That's
we,
probably
in
the most
fact, are
sensible
not
thing he
going to
said.
Abide by what they've done. 1 million Uyghurs, as you pointed out, Muslims, are in concentration camps. That's what they are right now. They're being abused. They're in concentration camps. And what we started in our administration that Trump stopped, we should be moving 60% of our sea power to that area of the world to let, in fact, the Chinese understand that they're not going to go any further. We are going to be there to protect other folks. Secondly, we in fact should make sure that we begin to have rebuild our alliances, which Trump has demolished, with Japan and South Korea, Australia, and Indonesia. We, in fact, need to have allies who understand that we're going to stop the Chinese from their actions. We should be gone to the UN immediately and sought sanctions against them in the United Nations for what they did. We have to be firm. We don't have to go to war, but we have to make it clear this is as far as you go, China. And in terms of the military buildup, it's real. But it would take them about 17 years to build up to where we are. We're not looking for a war, but we've got to make clear we are Pacific power, and we are not going to back away.
Mr. Yang, and then Senator Klobuchar.
That's actually one of the most rational interesting things I've ever heard Biden say. And not once did he talk about cockroaches or the hairs on his leg.
Why? Because they have AI technology that now is using facial recognition to identify protesters if they so much as do anything on the street, so they can follow up with them and detain them later.
Oh, Yang's getting real. This is why I like Yang, because he's unabashed. He's not crude, but he's unabashed in what he says.
In AI, because they have more data than we do, and their government is subsidizing it to the tune of tens of billions of dollars.
Yep.
I have sat with our leading technologists, and they say they cannot match the Chinese resources. China just produced its first major smartphone that does not have Google apps, and it is now trying to export its technology to the rest of the world.
And people are actually hungry for that because they want something that's not controlled by Google, not controlled by Apple.
And then you can bring the Chinese to the table in a very real way, because this is their top priority.
They took a look at what happened with PCs and the fact that
Senator Klobuchar.
Google or Apple or whatever doesn't control PCs. They have their
When it comes
markets.
to foreign policy, I think we need
But there's
to
ways to
keep
get
our
around it. You don't
promises
have
and
to
keep
use
our
Google
threats.
products.
And this president has done neither. And a
And they're
country
afraid
like
because they
China,
want to
their
control
leaders,
everything.
They watch that and they know. He has stood with dictators over innocents. He has stood with tyrants over free leaders. He does it all the time.
What?
And I have a little different take than some of my colleagues.
Bitch,
when it comes
please.
to what happened
What-
at that
what
conference
time are
in
you
NATO.
living in?
Yeah, they were making fun of him.
He's
some of the
so
foreign
hard on.
I've heard
He's harder on China than
make fun
Obama
of
ever
other
was,
senators
than
that.
Clinton ever
The
was,
point of
than
it
Bush
is
ever
that he
was.
couldn't even tolerate it. He is so thin-skinned that he walked. He quit. America doesn't quit. So if we want to send a message to the Chinese, we stand with our allies. We stand with
Sorry,
them
I gotta
firmly. We
try
have a
to
very clear and coherent
turn
foreign
away from the
policy
microphone when I
it
cough,
comes
but I
to
can't
human
actually
rights.
mute my microphone
Check out
when I have a
my
little bit of a
website,
coughing fit
amyklobuchar.com.
while playing
I have
and
the
listening
5
and
R's of our foreign policy about reasserting our values, rejoining international agreements like the Iranian nuclear agreement, but it all comes down to one R,
that's
returning
why.
to sanity.
my little Havoc character.
Mayor Buttigieg, and then we're going to take a break.
I'm actually not worried about the president's bad sense of humor when it comes to being made fun of. I'm worried about the fact that he is echoing the vocabulary of dictators around the world. When the American president refers to unfavorable press coverage as the product of the enemy of the people, democracy around the world gets weaker. Freedom of the press, not just here at home, but around the world, gets weaker. It's one more reminder of what is at stake, not just here at home, but for world history, in the imperative that we win this election.
Could I respond?
This is our chance.
Very
Okay,
brief.
I just want to
Very
make
brief.
very clear, Mayor, that the freedom of the press is deep in my heart. My dad was a newspaperman, and I am the one that asked every attorney general candidate we've had under Donald Trump, both of whom I opposed, about their respect for the First Amendment. And they have refused to follow the rules that Attorney General Holder put in place when it came to protecting our journalists. They would not commit that they wouldn't put a journalist in jail for doing their job. So this is not just talking points to me. This is the real world. And I think that experience that I will bring to the White House with protecting the First Amendment is worth more than any talking points.
We are going to take
I'm
a
sure
short
you do.
break, and we will be.
I'm sure she believes in the
We'll
first.
be right back with more questions.
The PBS NewsHour Politico-Democratic debate will continue in a moment.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Lisa Desjardins of the PBS News Hour. Again, I'm here with the gang for the
Oh my God,
Democratic
Tina,
debate
shut up.
tonight in Los Angeles, California. Before we come to you, I want to show viewers something they're going to see a little bit later as well, which is the other major facility involved in this debate. It's the Spin Room. This is in another building here on the campus of Loyola Marymount. You can look at the Spin Room right now. It is completely empty. That's because candidates are at their, or sorry, reporters are at their desks. What you see right now is actually the debate hall.
Yeah.
But there is a spin
I mean,
room
if I
in the next building over.
voted in
Anyway,
the
point
American
I was
election,
trying
if
to
I
make,
was
guys,
American,
you
I
know,
would be frothing at the mouth for
point
Andrew
is
Yang.
that,
Because yes, he's a
we have about
businessman,
500 members of the media here,
but
some
he's a
450. And
philanthropic
as members of the media, what stood
He
out
helps
so
people do
far? What were the
nonprofits,
key
so
moments that we've
the
had
government
in this
shouldn't
debate?
be
I
for
think it's been
profit. The
fairly
government
interesting.
should be for the
Dawn, you
people.
have
So
something. Ryan, Liz,
Well,
Politico.
stands to reason that they'd be he'd be a good pick
A lot of issues that we
for that
have
kind of
not
stuff.
seen,
I think.
in other debates, a really interesting discussion on nuclear. Big question about the differences between their climate plans, which really hasn't been addressed in previous debates. Elizabeth Warren and Yang disagreed on this. Elizabeth Warren would not add new nuclear capacity to address climate change. A lot of scientists suggest that perhaps you can't reach the carbon reduction targets that she has put forward without nuclear. Andrew Yang, who likes to think of himself as a man of science, is okay with nuclear, is not worried about the safety issues.
I like that you start with the nuclear difference.
Oh wow, I just got fucking.
Because we haven't had debates where the climate, most people have argued, oh, they're the same on climate, but we drew some interesting issues there. On relocation, which is in a climate future is going to be a serious issue. Biden said yes, he'd spend money on relocating
I thought was the
folks.
only definitive answer I heard on that.
Yes,
You
Bernie
don't
Sanders
just
took
spend
the
money.
point.
You have to have a plan. You have to have an agenda. You have to be able to do something about it.
I want to ask you all also about Elizabeth Warren. She took two kind of detailed questions that I didn't hear answers from her on. One about how that Stephanie brought up earlier during a break about how she answers economists who say that her tax plan could actually mean a very large loss of jobs. She said simply they're wrong. The other was on Guantanamo Bay. She said right away, definitively, she wants to close it, but the question was how. And there I kind of thought she's so prepared, she has so many details in her mind, but instead she sort of went to this larger talk of American ideals and foreign policy. Does it matter whether a candidate supplies direct answers and details to these questions, or do voters, Amy Walter, want this big vision and sort of lofty rhetoric?
Voters want to understand the value system of these candidates. They aren't getting into the weeds on these issues in the way that these candidates do. They want to feel like those candidates have thought through this, that they do understand the elements of the issue in front of them. But really what they need to deliver is, and this is the challenge for candidates at this stage of the process, but
ideas,
sort of
good
optimistic,
ideas.
forward-looking, a vision, a narrative, who we are as a country, who we can be as a country, and that the rest of the policies fit into that. Elizabeth Warren has a very clear narrative. The underlying challenge in our country, she says, is the corruption. Right?
Just
It's
wipe
the
their
money
entire
that
team.
fuels our comes from big corporations and other wealthy individuals that keep us in this cycle that we're in right now. That's her bigger, broader narrative that she's been making now since the very beginning of the campaign.
Laura Barone Lopez, yeah.
And I think Warren also has been very effective in past debates, in this debate, as you said, Amy, circling her questions back to her core message, which is about corruption. And also her direct answer, I think, is what voters are looking for, whether it's about Guantanamo or the other issues that are coming up. They want to know exactly where that candidate stands, and then they understand that maybe later on they'll figure out the plan for it. I think that also we've been diving more into foreign policy in this debate than we have in the past.
Yes.
It gives candidates like Biden an opportunity to showcase some of his strengths, which is
Guy
something
didn't
that
get anybody with
he's
his
been
ult.
doing all along on the campaign trail. He talks about foreign policy a lot there. He also talks about how he's being attacked by Trump, and that, like Trump, Putin also doesn't want him to be president, so this is giving him an opportunity to talk about that a lot more. I'd also say that Tom Steyer seems to be having somewhat of a strong night, which so far.
Yeah, this was one of my questions. This was one of the differences in this debate. With fewer candidates, I feel like I've gotten more of a presence of Tom Steyer and Andrew Yang. They're getting more opportunities to speak.
Yeah, they are getting
Steyer
more
said very
opportunities to
clearly he
speak, which
thought
is good
climate
because
change
they're
was what he would prioritize
they're more
in
than just the
China,
big
essentially
big three
over
candidates.
Hong Kong. What do you make of those two candidates on either side of the stage? Ryan.
It shows you that if you can survive to the final rounds of this kind of debate process, which really is about winnowing the field, right, every month, you have an opportunity. Now, look, Steyer has, in the early stage, Steyer has struggled to build momentum, but a candidate like Amy Klobuchar, who entered this race as a real underdog, but is still on that stage, ticking
She's
up
on
in
the stage,
Iowa.
but nobody
These
likes
smaller
her.
stage kids,
Nobody
someone
likes
like
Amy.
that, an opportunity to get a second, third, fourth look from a big chunk of voters.
Yeah. She's had her hand raised several times during the debate. Viewers can't always see, but her hand goes up a lot. Stephanie, what's stood out to you?
Well, I
Got
will say
you.
that the Midwestern view of climate change from both Buttigieg and Klobuchar felt fresh to me within that debate. When we talk about Biden, I agree with what Laura said. He was able to play to some of his strengths when it
I
comes
don't care what any of
to
them
China.
say. If they don't have any
Talking about
plans of
Obama's policy
substance,
the Asia pivot,
Katie
he talked
Lang.
about moving 60% of U.S. military projected force into the Asia Pacific. That's a continuation of an Obama policy. I think we'll see that as a theme for Biden throughout this campaign, is that continuation. Also with Biden, at that moment when he talked about the epiphany and he said, I can't imagine a place where we don't have cooperation again. I think that will also come up again.
All right. You're getting a lot of substance and a lot of foreign policy, and we're going to now turn back to the PBS NewsHour Politico-Democratic debate.
Reaper on the...
Live from Los Angeles, the PBS NewsHour Politico Democratic debate continues. Once again, Judy Woodruff.
Welcome back to the PBS NewsHour Politico Democratic presidential debate. I'm Judy Woodruff, joined by my PBS NewsHour colleagues Amna Nawaz and Yamiche Alcindor, by Tim Alberta of Politico. Now, let's turn to the next question from Tim.
Thank you, Judy. Candidates, let's make things interesting. Former President Obama said this week when asked who should be running countries, that if women were in charge, you'd see a significant improvement on just about everything. He also said, quote, if you look at the world and look at the problems, it's usually old people, usually old men, not getting out of the way. Senator Sanders, you are the oldest candidate on stage this evening.
And I'm white as well.
Okay.
Respond to what the former president had.
And I'm white as well. I'm your crazy old grandpappy.
On this one. Maybe a little self-serving, but I do disagree. Here is the issue. The issue is where power resides in America. And it's not
Where does
white or
power
black or
reside, Bernie?
male or
Tell
female.
us. Educate us.
We are living in a nation increasingly becoming an oligarchy. Where you have a
okay, I
handful of
agree.
billionaires who spend hundreds of millions of dollars buying
To an extent, I
elections
agree.
and politicians. You have more income and wealth inequality.
But you
today
don't have any
than
good,
time
like,
since the
other than
1920s.
wealth distribution, you don't have
We are
any
the
good
only
ideas
major
on
country
how
on earth
to
not to
correct that.
guarantee
Because what you
healthcare
want to do
for
is
all
you want to
people,
correct the
which is
course
why
of
we
these
need
things. You don't want to
Medicare
just
for
put up a
all.
dam and
We are
have
facing
that
an
that
existential
momentum just
crisis
crash on the
of
dam,
climate
and then
change.
you're left with
The
both
issue is
a
not
disaster
old
and a
or
broken
young,
dam.
male or female. The issue
Why
is
do you think
working
communism
people
doesn't work?
standing up,
And socialism
taking
doesn't
on
work?
The billionaire class and creating a
And I think it's
government
hilarious
and
how now it's the
economy that
billionaire
funds
class.
all,
Before it was the
not
millionaires
just
and the
the 1%.
billionaires. But now that I'm a millionaire, it's okay.
President Biden, I'm going to guess that President Obama did not clear that remark through your campaign ahead of time.
And
What
I'm
do
going to
you
guess.
say to that?
I'm going to guess he wasn't talking about me either.
Okay.
Number one.
What?
Look, I'm running because I've been around. On my experience. With
And
experience
when Joe
comes
Biden
judgment
says
and
he's
a little
been
bit of wisdom.
around.
The fact is that we're in a position
He's
now,
been
the next
around.
United States is going to inherit two things: economy that is out of kilter, and a domestic policy that needs to be. We have to unite America, and a foreign policy that requires somebody to be able on day one stand up, look out, the entire world know who that person is, know what they stand for, and know they know them. And that's the reason I'm running. I have more experience in doing that than anybody on this stage.
Just to follow up, Vice President Biden, if elected, you would turn 82 at the end of your first term. You'd be the oldest president in American history.
Like Winston Churchill.
Are you willing to commit American history?
American history.
Yes. Are you?
I was joking. That was a joke.
Okay. I appreciate it.
Okay. You
Politico
say
don't
so.
have much of a sense of humor.
Oh, we've got a great sense of humor. They wouldn't have put me on stage otherwise. Are you willing to commit tonight to running for a second term if you're elected next November?
No, I'm not willing to commit one way or another. Here's the deal. I'm not even elected one term yet, and let's see where we are. Let's see what happens.
Okay. The second most rational thing I've ever heard him say.
But it's a nice thought.
See, when Joe Biden's on,
Klobuchar, you had your
he's a
hand
good
Thank you
good
for
speaker.
asking a woman this question.
And I think he's prepared tonight.
think-
As a woman.
First of all,
Look at my vagina! Look at my vagina!
was on Trevor
Hey
Noah's
guys, look
show.
at my vagina!
I explained how in the history of the Senate there was something like 2,000 men and only 50 women in the whole history. And he said if a nightclub had numbers that bad, they would shut it down. However, it is not.
It's a good
just
thing
about
government
numbers,
isn't
it's
like
about
a
what
nightclub,
you've done.
Trevor
And here's
Noah.
my argument. If you look at the poll
Talk about
of
someone
the
else
state
who's
that
just
knows me best,
fucking
and that is the
insufferable
state of Minnesota,
and a piece
it
of
showed
shit
in
and
the state
two-bit
that held
liar.
the lowest margin of victory. It showed that I beat Donald Trump by 18 points. I beat him
Sure
with
you did.
men more than anyone on this stage.
Sure you did.
So I think what matters in this
Sure you
election
did.
is can you bring in those rural and suburban areas, particularly in the Midwest? And number two, what will you do when you
Oh,
get there?
Lords of the Night
And I
is
am
streaming.
someone that
I'm
has
not
passed
going
over
to,
100 bills
assholes have to
with
go to-
men and women, with Republicans
show
and
my
with
support, drop
Democrats,
them a
including
like.
changing the sexual harassment laws for the
Satsu's
United States
channel.
Congress, a bill I
Um,
led, so taxpayers are no longer going to have to pay for people that harass other people.
Senator
I have
Warren.
passed
That's a
laws
grilled cheese
for
I don't
drug
wanna eat.
shortages. I have done work in our rural areas. I think that's what most matters to people. I would be so proud to be the first woman president, but mostly I want to be a president that gets things done and improves people's lives.
Thank you, Senator Klobuchar.
What things done? You still don't have.
Senator Warren, you would be the oldest president ever inaugurated. I'd like you to weigh in as well.
I'd also be the youngest woman ever inaugurated.
Oh snap! You go, girlfriend! You go! Yeah, slay queen!
I
Oh.
believe that President Obama was talking about who has power in America.
She looks like a
whose
gremlin
voices
in a
get heard.
fucking wig.
I believe he's talking about women and people of color and trans people and people whose voices just so often get shoved out. And for me, the best way to understand
Whose
that
voices
is
get
looking at
shoved
how
down?
people are running their campaigns in
Idiots?
2020.
People with
You know,
bad
I made a
ideas?
decision when I decided to run not to do business as usual. And now I'm
Not
proud
to do
now
business as usual.
100,000 selfies. That's 100,000.
100,000 selfies, guys!
Handshakes and stories. Stories from people who are struggling with student loan debt. Stories from people who can't pay their medical bills. Stories from people who can't.
I take a
find
selfie
jobs.
with her just so I
Now,
can meme it
most of the
later.
People on the stage run a traditional
Or make a
campaign.
funny face like,
And
oh my
then
god,
it's
she's
going
going to eat
back
me.
and forth from coast to coast to rich people and people who can put up $5,000 or more in order to have a picture taken, in order to have a conversation.
I
and in
don't
order to
understand.
maybe
I
be
keep.
considered
I don't
to
know
be
what it is,
an
guys. I keep getting a
ambassador.
frame rate
Those
drop. I
selfies-
don't
no,
know
let me
if it's
finish this.
my.
Those selfies cost nobody anything. And I get it. In a democracy, we all have a lot of different points of view,
If
and
it's the
everybody
game,
gets
if
one
it's
vote. But here's the
OBS, if
thing.
it's the Starfield,
People who
like
can put down
what it could be.
$5,000
I've seen
to
people
have
with a
picture
lot
taken
more
don't have the
assets
same
than I
priorities
have. I
as
have,
people
just
who
a
are struggling
basic,
with student loan
basic
debt
setup there.
or are struggling to pay off medical
My
debt.
logo, the
I
screen.
I'm running a campaign.
Oh, maybe it's because
where
it's trying to
people
put
whose
two video
voices
screen.
get heard.
No, because people
We
do that all the
can't
time.
have-
Thank you, Senator
we
Warren.
can't have
And
people
Elwin can
who
attest.
can
My
put down
newest rig is just a
$5,000 for
complete
check,
beast. It should be eating
drown
this
out
stuff
the
for
voices
breakfast,
of
not
everyone else.
Thank you, Senator
They
Warren.
don't
under the
in my
pressure.
campaign, and they
Mayor
won't in
Buttigieg.
my White House.
Mayor Buttigieg, you had your hand raised. Well, can't help but feel that might have been directed at me. And here's the thing. We're in the fight of our lives right now. Donald Trump and his allies have made it abundantly clear.
Donald
that they
Trump
will
and his
stop
allies. His
any
allies.
foreign interference
Those
in foreign
Nazis.
power. They have already put together
Nazis!
more than $300 million. This is our chance. This is our only chance to defeat Donald Trump. And we shouldn't try to do it with one hand tied behind our back. The way we're going to win is to bring everybody
to our side in this fight. If that means that you're a grad student digging deep to go online to PeteForAmerica.com and chip in $10,
Pete for
that's
America.
great. And if you can drop $1,000 without blinking, that's great too. We need everybody's help in this fight. I'm not going to turn away anyone who wants to help us defeat Donald Trump. We need
Not going to turn away
Democrats
any
to
money.
bring us
No
on
money
board,
is
yes,
too
but
small.
We also need independents.
We'll
worried
take
about
all
the
your
direction of the
monies.
country. If you were a Republican, disgusted with what's going on in your own party, we're not going to agree on everything, but we need you in this fight, and I will welcome you to our side.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Senator Warren, 45 seconds to respond.
So the mayor just recently had a fundraiser that was held in a wine cave full of crystals and served $900 a bottle wine.
It's called fundraising.
Think about who comes to that. He had promised that every fundraiser he would do would be open door, but this one was closed door. We made the decision
Okay,
many
so you
years
don't like
ago
the snooty people.
that rich people
What about
in
you?
smoke-filled rooms would not pick the next president of the United States. Billionaires in wine caves should not pick the next president of the United States.
Mr. Mayor, your response.
You know, according to Forbes magazine, I am literally the only person on this stage who's not a millionaire or a billionaire.
It's true.
So if this is important, this is the problem with issuing purity tests you cannot yourself pass. If I pledge never to be in the company of a progressive Democratic donor, I couldn't be up here. Senator, your net worth is 100 times mine. Now, supposing that you went home feeling the holiday spirit, I know this isn't like
She
you,
got
stay with
bitch
me,
slapped.
decided to go on to PeteForAmerica.com and give the maximum allowable by law, $2,800. Would that pollute my campaign because it came from a wealthy person? No, I would be glad to have that support. We need the support from everybody who is committed to helping us defeat Donald Trump.
We would like to bring in everyone, but obviously, Senator Warren, I'd like to give you a chance to respond.
I do not sell access to my time. I
Yes,
don't
you do.
full-time with
Yes, you
millionaires and
do.
billionaires.
Sorry, as of when, Senator?
I don't meet
Don't
behind
fucking
closed
lie, you
doors
cunt.
with big dollar donors. And look, I've taken one that ought to be an easy step for everyone here. I've said to anyone who wants to donate to me, if you want to donate to me, that's fine. But don't come around later expecting to be named ambassador.
Yeah.
Because that's what
Yeah,
goes on
okay.
in these high dollar fundraisers. I said
Only
no,
you
and
do
I
that.
asked everybody on this stage
You're
to join
you're
me.
actually
This
lying.
ought to be an easy step, and here's the problem. If you can't stand up and take the steps that are
You were
relatively
caught in a
easy,
lie, and now you're
can't
trying to
stand up
turn
the
it back.
wealthy and well-connected when it's
What a
relatively
scum
easy
fuck
when you're
bitch.
a candidate, then how can the American people believe you're going to stand up to the wealthy and well-connected when you're president and it's really hard?
Judy.
Senator, I've got to respond. First
Mr.
of all,
Mayor, we're
if
going
you
to give you one
can't
more
say
chance to
no
respond.
to a donor, then you have no business running for office in the first place. But also, Senator, your presidential campaign right now, as we speak, is funded in part by money you transferred, having raised it at those exact same big-ticket fundraisers you now denounce. Did it corrupt you, Senator? Of course not. So to denounce the same kind of fundraising guidelines that President Obama went by, that Speaker Pelosi goes by, that you yourself went by until not long ago in order to build the Democratic Party and build a campaign ready for the fight of our lives, these purity tests shrink the stakes of the most important election.
Judy.
We'd like to bring everyone in. We'd like to bring everyone in. We'd like to bring everyone in, but Senator Klobuchar had your hand up first. We'd
I
like to
did
call on
not
you.
come here to listen to this argument. I came here to make a case for progress, and I have never even been to a wine cave. I've been to the Wind Cave in South Dakota, which I suggest you go to. So what is making a case for progress about? That is what unites us up here instead of what divides us, which is campaign finance reform. That means passing a constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United. It means
It's
making
not
the
just
first
about
bill
Citizens
we pass
United,
when
though.
I am president will be H.R. 1, which is the ethics reform passed in the House, which is currently sitting on Mitch McConnell's desk, along with 400 bills. And if you don't think we can get this done, well, we can, but only if we win this election big. Not by arguing with each other, but by finding what unites us and getting this done. I came to make a case for progress.
Well,
Thank you, Senator Klobuchar. Senator Sanders.
I am rather proud, maybe, I don't know, the only candidate up here doesn't have any billionaire contributions. But you know what I do have? We have received more contributions from more individuals than any candidate in the history of the United States of America at this point in an election, averaging $18 apiece. Now, there's a real competition going on up here. My good friend Joe, and he is a good friend, he's received contributions from 44 billionaires. Pete, on the other hand, is trailing, Pete. You only got 39 billionaires contributing. So, Pete, we look forward to you. I know you're
Yeah, sit back, the four of us, and have that nice $900 bottle of wine. Why not?
Take on Joe on that issue. But what is not a laughing matter, my friends. This is why 3 people own more wealth than the bottom half. This is why Amazon and other major corporations pay 0 in federal taxes. We need to get money out of politics. We should run our campaigns on that basis.
Thank you, Senator Sanders. Vice President Biden, 45 seconds to respond.
My average contribution is $43, number one. That's number one. Number two, the idea that the senator is suggesting that I am in the pocket of billionaires, when in fact they oppose everything that I have ever done and continue to do. I have made sure from the very beginning, every one of my
What, like making your son a billionaire by
single solitary one,
using your
one
position in
single
power?
time,
Well,
period.
he's probably not a
I
billionaire,
made
but
sure that you know exactly where all the largest contribution I've accepted is $2,800, which is allowed under law, and I'm the first person to introduce the constitutional amendment to make sure that there is no all public funding of elections and all private funding. And we all should take a commitment, make a commitment to that right now on this stage. In the meantime, you got to fund the campaign.
step away for a second,
and we,
grab
in
a
fact, have funded the
drink, I'm out of
campaign. Average
coffee.
Contribution $43.
Thank you, Vice President.
Let me just
Mr. Steyer, I would like to bring you in.
Can I? Listen, I'm running because this government is broken because it's purchased by corporations. And I've spent 10 years fighting those corporations and beating them and building grassroots organizations to push power down to the people. That's what I've been doing for a decade. But let me say this.
Has it?
someone
I don't
who's
know. I don't know
running
much about
this
him. I don't know if
conversation,
that's
and his
true or
name's
not.
Donald Trump.
That's right.
We know how he's
Orange
gonna
man
run.
bad.
He's
Everybody
told
take a
us
drink.
Last week, he looked at a group of Americans and said, I don't like you. You don't like me. It doesn't matter. You're going to support me because the Democrats will destroy the economy in 15 minutes. We need to go after this guy. He's a different breed of cat, and we need to beat him. And
Yeah,
we
he's
need
not
to talk about
establishment.
prosperity. And I spent 25 years building a business. We're going to have to take him on the economy.
I mean, as much as I don't like him as a person, I do like him as a political figure.
This corrupt president and beat him on the economy where he thinks
And not
he's
just
king,
because
and where, in fact,
he's a
fraud and a
master
failure.
level troll,
We're
but
gonna end it there.
he's actually getting some stuff done, and he's trying to get
I wanna
other
turn
stuff
now
done
to an issue that's been
that
in
he's
the headlines
promised.
quite a bit, and that is immigration. Mr. Yang, we have a question here from a professor right here at
Well, that's
the
the thing,
University.
Eloin.
There are nearly 200,000
Biden is riding those coattails of the golden age that was the Obama years, and he doesn't seem to realize that's not going to win him any points.
Another president could just overturn it again. So, will you move on a permanent legislative fix for Dreamers in your first 100 days of election?
Of course I would. I'm the son of immigrants myself, and I know that Dreamers are essentially Americans in everything but this legal classification. I just want to return to this conversation because I think it's core. Our country is deeply misogynist, and most all of us know that.
Is
Money
it?
and men are tied together. That's where I thought Elizabeth was taking the conversation. The fact is, strong societies would elect more female leaders.
Hate facts.
Strong men treat women well for the same reasons. I'm on the record saying that you need both strong men and female leaders in government, because the fact is, if you get too many men alone and leave us alone for a while, we kind of become morons.
Do we, though? A group of men created the Constitution. A group of men...
So it's related to our campaign finance
never mind.
rules, because right now the fact is we operate in
A group of men created the
marketplace. And that includes
the CPU. A group of men created the home computer.
Democracy dollars into the hands of every American voter, instead of 5% contributing, you'd see that rate skyrocket to 50 or 60%, and you'd have many, many more women who would run for office because they don't have to go shake the money tree in the wine cave.
Thank you, Mr.
Could I
Yang.
address-
I'd like to follow up.
Oh, that wine cave.
Mr. Yang,
Back to the wine cave, guys.
to move, you pledged to
Hey,
move
Linz, how you doing?
legislative fix in your
Just
first
a little
parliamentary
casual
debate.
impromptu
Dreamers say that
stream.
They are frustrated by Democrats' failure
Watch the
to
DNC,
prioritize
because
their
really, like, the only
strategy.
person I follow that's even talking about it is Razor Fist.
Democrats now.
And those can be a little impersonal. Just wanted to see what other people had to say while we, yeah. We're playing the drinking game.
The fact is, almost half of Fortune 500 companies
Anytime
were started
climate
by
change is
immigrants
used
or
as a
children of
boogeyman,
immigrants.
and anytime Biden uses
And immigrants are being scapegoated for
Obama
issues they have
as
absolutely nothing to do
his
with.
his
If
scapegoat,
you go to the factory in Michigan, it's
not
wall-to-wall
scapegoat, as his
immigrants, it's
his
wall-to-wall
call to
robots and machines. We have to send
legitimacy.
the opposite message of this administration. And as your president, I think I could send a very clear message where if you're considering immigrating to this country, and I'm the president,
Yeah,
you realize
exactly.
my son or daughter can
Noof.
become
And I
president of the
mean,
United States.
you know, it was also a
Current
group of
administration,
men,
and
mostly
that's the message I
men,
would love
who
to send
started
to the
those
Thank you, Mr.
world
Yang.
wars.
Senator Sanders.
So it just like there's good and evil everywhere.
Senator Sanders, I have a new question for you in response.
It's not it's not like the exclusive domain of men or
This
women.
is related, sir, but there
It's
are estimated
everywhere.
to be as many as 12 million undocumented immigrants in the U.S., more than 2 million right here in California. If you have a chance to forge a bipartisan immigration reform plan, would you insist on a path to citizenship for all 12 million or just a segment of that population?
This is what I would do. Day one, executive order, restore the legal status of 1.8 million young people in the DACA program. Day one, we change.
So day one, you're immediately just going to abuse your power and make an executive order.
From the arms of their mothers.
At least he's being truthful about it.
Day one, we introduce bipartisan legislation, which will in fact be comprehensive, which will result in a path toward citizenship for all of the 11 million who are undocumented. That is what the people of our country want. Trump thinks mistakenly that he is going to win re-election by dividing us up. We are going to win this election by bringing our people together, black and white and Latino, Native American, Asian American. That's what this campaign is about. That's what America must be about.
Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you. I started my day-to-day with a group of immigrants who were there talking to me about housing. And I thought about this president and what he's done. He has used our immigrants as political pawns. Every single day, he tries to draw a wedge. I will be a different president. My view on this?
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, like I said earlier, I know you weren't here for it, Sin, but
that was in the group to work on the immigration reform package.
the problems he wants to tackle are problems that most people don't.
Not everyone did.
But the way he wants to tackle them is the most insane shit you've ever heard. Socialism now! We're gonna take everybody's money and give it to everybody!
Passed that with Republican votes.
A
Then
duttering
I was
old
in
fool.
the small group that worked on the compromise on the Dreamers that would have solved that problem. We didn't get that done because
Like,
the president gut punched us.
Who I would say are the two top so far tonight would be, unfortunately, Biden and Yang. They've been the best performing tonight. They're making good points, and Biden's surprisingly not talking about cockroaches and leg hair.
He's not against immigration. He's against immigration by non-white people.
Yes.
Oh, is he now?
This is his attempt
Oh.
to divide us. as Senator Sanders said
Guys,
on
you know what that means.
And
If
that's
that
what
was
he's
an
been
orange
doing
man
since
bad
the
right
very
there.
first day he started
Take a
running for
drink.
president. He's been
Another sip of my
vilifying
beer.
non-white people. He's been trying to inflame his base and scare them that if in fact white people lose control of this country, that they're going to lose control of their lives. And as somebody who lives in a majority minority state, which is California, what he's doing is so wrong on so many different levels. I agree with Senator Sanders. We have to reframe this argument completely. We have to go back to the idea that every American
Wait, what
is
argument are
worth,
we on?
Being
Immigration?
a full human being on every right. This is a racial argument by a racist president who's trying to divide us and who's vilifying people. It's absolutely wrong. and it's
Really,
led
really.
people
So
to
let
break
me
the laws of
just
humanity
one
in our
example.
name.
Barbara for you to see. The YouTuber. She's white.
To you, Mr. Mayor. You said
She
last
had her
month
visa
that the
denied.
U.S. owes compensation to children
I guess
separated
Trump
from
is
their
is
families
is
at the
racist
southern
to
border.
everybody.
The
White
consensus
people,
among
black
child
people.
welfare experts is that those thousands of children will likely suffer lifelong trauma as a result of that separation. Are you committing, as president, to financial compensation for those thousands of children?
Yes, and they should have a fast track to citizenship. Because what the United States did
What?
under this president to them
How
is wrong.
most of
We
these
have a
people,
moral
these
obligation
quote unquote children,
what was wrong.
these anchor babies, most of them have had years,
It's not something I formed in
years
in Washington.
to go
It
through the
is
immigration
the fact that
process to
my
become
household,
a citizen.
my family,
Through
I
DACA.
came from
They
abroad. My
chose not
father
to. They
immigrated
chose
to
to
this
be
country
lazy and not do it and just,
became a US
you know,
citizen.
lean on DACA their
It comes to the
entire
fact
life
that
until
I'm the
that
mayor
until
of a
they
city
got
where
rescinded.
neighborhoods that were left for dying are now coming back to life.
Left
largely
for
because of the
dying.
Contributions, mainly of Latino
Nice
immigrants.
appeal to
And I've
emotion.
seen
you
those same
fucking-
neighborhoods shut down, families huddling in church, panicking just because of the rumor of an ICE raid. Did not make our country safer.
Could I
Had to
respond?
look into the eyes of an
A rumor of an ICE raid.
whose father was deported, even though he had nothing so
God
much
damn
as
those
traffic
cops upholding the law.
I try to think
How
of something
dare
to
you?
tell that boy because I couldn't tell him what he most wanted.
How
to
dare
do,
you?
Which is just that he was going to have his dad back. How can harming that young man possibly make America safe?
Mr. Mayor,
When I am president, based on those experiences, I will make sure that this is a country of laws and of values. And that means not only ending these unspeakable
that was
cruel
weird.
practices at the border, but finally and truly fixing the immigration system that has needed a full overhaul since the 1980s. We
Mr. Mayor.
cannot
Yeah,
wait
that's been
4
happening.
years,
The
10
automated
years.
Google
We
system is
cannot wait any more.
separating
Thank you,
words
Mr. Mayor. Just to follow
automatically
up,
like cunt.
since you do support compensation for those families, should the U.S. also compensate descendants of enslaved people? Do you support reparations for
Get the
African Americans?
fuck
I
out of here.
support H.R. 40, which is the bill that has been proposed in Congress to establish a commission to look at reparations. But we shouldn't wait for that commission to do its work to do things that are reparative. Remember, we're not talking about a gift to anybody. We're talking about mending what was broken. We're talking about
What was
generational
broken
wealth,
100 years
the
ago?
wealth of generations of African Americans. And just crossing out a racist policy and replacing it with a neutral one is not enough to deliver equality. Harms compound, just like a dollar saved in its value compounds over time. So does the value of a dollar stolen. And that is why the United States must act immediately with investments in minority-owned
they got a
businesses,
sniper
with
now.
investments in health equity, with investments in HBCUs, and on the longer term, look at reparations so that we can mend what has been broken.
Vice President Biden, do you support reparations?
Look, I mean, since I haven't spoken on this, got a chance. Number one, the reason we're the country we are is because of immigration. We've been able to cherry pick the best from every single continent. The people who come here have determination, resilience. They are ready to stand up and work like the devil. We have 24 out of every 100 children in our school today is Hispanic. The idea that we are going to walk away and not provide every opportunity for them is not only stupid and immoral, but it's bad for America. They are the future
Joe
of
angry.
America, and we should invest in them. Everybody will benefit from it.
But yeah, as I
Every
was
single
saying, like,
American.
I
And
mean,
you
he
just get
said
used
some
to
good
it.
things. He's
This
still
is
Joe
the
Biden
nation
at the
of
end of the day.
immigrants. That's who we are.
And it's a
That's
very
why
low
we're who we
bar
are. That's what makes us
to do
different,
well in
and we should
these.
invest in it.
Thank you, Mr. Biden. Senator Klobuchar, you had your
But of
hand
course, I'm a Yang Gang kind of guy. I appreciate his talking points. I appreciate his addressing policies and not just giving empty promises.
I look at this a different way. When we were in the last debate, Mayor, you basically mocked the 100 years of experience on the stage. And what do I see on this stage? I see Elizabeth's work starting the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and helping 29 million people. I see the Vice President's work in getting $2 billion for his cancer moonshot. I see Senator Sanders' work of working to get the Veterans Bill passed across the aisle. And I see what I've done, which is to negotiate 3 farm bills and be someone that actually had major provisions put in those bills. So while you can dismiss committee hearings, I think this experience works. And I have not denigrated your experience as a local official. I have been one. You know, I just think you should respect our experience when you look at how you evaluate someone who can get things done.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Mayor, I'll give you a chance to respond.
Oh shit, my headset's dying again. God damn it.
I did denigrate my experience, Senator, and it was before the break, and I was going to let it go because we got bigger fish to fry here. But you implied
I don't
that
think we have bigger fish to fry than picking a president of the United States.
You're right.
He was talking about the individual
Before the break,
issues, you
seemed to
dumb
imply
cunt.
that my relationship to the First Amendment was a talking point. As if anyone up here has any more or less commitment to the Constitution than anybody else up here. Let me tell you about my relationship to the First Amendment. It is part of the Constitution that I raised my right hand and swore to defend with my life. That is my experience, and it may not be the same as yours, but it counts, Senator. It counts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Senator Klobuchar, you have 45 seconds to respond.
I certainly respect your military experience. That's not what this is about. This is about choosing a president. And I know
It's about choosing a president.
I know
You don't say,
chair
Amy.
of the Democratic National Committee. That's not something that I wanted to do. I want to be president of the United States. And the point is, we should have someone heading up this ticket.
Bad
that is
answer.
actually
I want to be president of the United
show that you
States.
Gather the support that you talk about.
Maybe you should have said something a little bit better, like,
Independence, as well as a fired
oh,
up
I don't
Democratic
know.
base.
I
And
want to
not just done
represent
it
the
once.
people.
have
I want to
done it
represent
3
my
times.
constituents. I want to
think winning
invoke
matters.
trust
I
into
think
me.
a track record of getting things done matters, and I also think showing our party.
I didn't
that we
realize
can
my
actually
D-Live
bring
widgets were
people
still up
with
there.
us,
And
have
I'm
a
not even
wider
streaming
tent,
on D-Live.
Have a bigger coalition, and yes, longer coattails. That matters.
Thank you, Senator. Denise?
I got to respond to that. Senator, I know that.
Yeah, if this
you just
wasn't
go
on
by
PBS
vote
on
totals,
public access, I
maybe
wouldn't be
what goes
streaming
on
it.
in my city seems
I don't want to take the risk
You
of the
wanna
hit
talk
because
about the
it's happened
capacity
so
to
many
win?
times.
Try putting together a coalition to bring you back to office with 80% of the vote as a gay dude in Mike Pence's Indiana.
See, that's how you play your gay card or your woman card.
If you had won in Indiana, that would be one thing. You tried and you lost by 20 points.
But let's talk about how we win. Excuse me. Let's talk about how we win an election, which is something everybody here wants to do in terms of defeating the most dangerous president in American history.
You?
So let me
You're
tell
not
you how you
president
win it.
yet.
You have the
Oh, he's
largest
talking. Oh,
voter
guys, Orange Man
turnout
bad.
in the
Another
history
drink.
of America. And you don't have the
Oh, man, that
largest
was a big
voter
gulp that
turnout
time.
unless you create energy and excitement.
Well, don't
And
worry,
you don't
Noob, because
create
Bernie
energy
Sanders
and
has got a
excitement
plan to give you
unless
cheesecake.
You are prepared to take on the people who own America and are prepared to speak to the people who are working in America. We need a progressive agenda. Medicare for all, raising the minimum wage to a living wage, leading the world in combating climate change, making public colleges and universities
Said it at the beginning of the stream, I'll say it again.
and
A livable wage in the middle of rural Ohio is not the same as a living wage living in Manhattan.
And that is, of course, education. Senator Warren, you propose free public college
Dumb
tuition and
fuck.
student loan forgiveness.
That's not a
for most
federal
families.
issue.
Why should wealthy families be able to send their kids to public college for free? Why not concentrate that government help on those most in need?
So as I've talked about before.
Oh, I forgot
have
she was
2
even
cent
here. She
wealth
hasn't said
tax
much lately.
proposed for millionaires and billionaires, and that gives us enough money to invest in all of our babies age 0 to 5, to put an historic $800 billion investment in public schools K through 12, and that will permit us typical school
And excuse me for the coughing again.
for every single
While
person
I'm
who wants
doing
an
this through
education,
OBS, I don't have a
cancel
ready.
student
I mean,
loan
I
debt,
guess I could mute my on my mic, but
put a $50 billion investment
too busy
in
not
our
trying to
historically
cough
black
not directly
colleges and
into the
universities,
microphone, you know.
and cancel student loan debt for 43 million Americans. Look, this
Yeah,
is
just
about
just
money,
forget
but this is
everybody's
also
debt.
about
Why don't
value.
you guys pay for it? You
We
guys
need
are
to make
actually
an investment in our
wealthy
future,
enough.
and the best way to do that is
Why don't
let's
you guys pay
invest in
for
the
it?
public
Oh, they would never
education
do
of
that.
our
They'd rather
children.
give themselves
That
raises.
starts when they're babies and it goes long after high school. We want to have families. I meet families every day in the selfie lines who talk
In the
about what it
selfie
means
lines.
to be crushed by
Everybody's
student
lining
loan
up
debt.
for
That's
selfies
why
with
I have a
Elizabeth
proposal
Warren.
popular among Democrats,
Quick, Ma, get the
popular among
camera.
Republicans, popular among independents, to ask those at the top to pay a little more so somebody can get rid of that student loan debt, so they can make an investment in themselves, start a small business, buy a
Oh, I
car,
want to hit her in the
create a future
face.
for themselves and for this country.
Thank you, Senator. I see some hands, but I want to go to Mayor Buttigieg.
It's
Mayor
brutal.
Buttigieg, your plan offers free or discounted public college only to families making up to
Oh yeah, I closed.
$150,000 a year. Do you think
I
Senator
closed
Warren's
Overwatch. I
plan
didn't know what
offers free
else. I
college
wanted to switch to
many
something, but I didn't know what.
I do think that if you're in that lucky top 10%, I still wish you well. Don't get me wrong. I just want you
This is
to go
the problem
ahead
with
and pay
having
your
too
own
many
tuition.
video games.
Now, we can still have
Never know
public
what to
service loan
play.
forgiveness for those who go into lower income fields to deal with that. But if you're in that top 10%, I think you're going to be, for the most part, okay. And there is a very real choice on where every
screw
one
it.
of these tax dollars goes. So I very much agree with Senator Warren on raising more tax revenue from millionaires and billionaires. I just don't agree on the part about spending.
Yeah,
it
one
on
time, like I
millionaires
said,
and
he
billionaires when it comes
has.
to their college tuition.
He talks about the right ideas, but his solutions, I'm talking about Bernie, just are insane. And, you know, when I was first listening to him, I was like, okay, I can get behind this. And then I learned more and found out what he wants to do, the policies he wants to enact, the seppuku he wants to enforce on the United States. It's not going to work, and it made me very scared and very much so not a Bernie person anymore.
Around the edges of a huge student loan
I think that's
debt
why you
burden
might get people
that
like Shu who
disproportionately
still
affects
do
people of
believe in the
color.
message because they don't do the
African-Americans
digging.
are more likely to have to
You know,
borrow
they'll
money to go
probably
to
read
school,
the
more
New York
likely to
Times
borrow
article or
more money
whatever
while
and
they're
then
in
move on
school
with their
and have
day.
a harder time paying it off. We want to make an investment in the future, then open up education
I could
for
do Stardew.
all of our
I haven't
kids.
played it in
That's how
Thank
we
you,
build
Senator-
the future.
Senator Sanders.
Could I respond?
I believe, the concept of universality. And
Universality.
one of the crises in America today is people are sick and tired of filling out forms. So you're not eligible
So,
for the program.
let's
today
take away the
because
forms,
you're 150.
and anybody, no matter who they are, they could be Canadian, they could be Chinese, they could be from South Africa, and they could just walk in here and get free healthcare, and free education, and free welfare,
They should be able
and
to
free
go to a
cheesecake,
public school.
and free oranges.
Right now
We'll
is
just
a
give away everything
revolution
for free.
in education. We have got to end this dysfunctional child care system and make sure that every working class person in this country can find high quality, affordable child care. We need to make public colleges and universities.
We'll just take care of everybody's kids.
And by taxing
Don't have
billionaires
kids, don't like kids,
and by
doesn't
taxing
matter. We're
Wall
gonna take your money
we
and
will cancel all
subsidize people who
student debt
probably
in
shouldn't
this
have been
country.
having kids instead of, oh, I don't know, educating people on both the possible outcomes of sex and how to have sex safely so that you avoid unwanted pregnancies.
Disabilities, and though he's been employed for about 5 years at a local pizza parlor, the future is very
The problem
uncertain for his
is,
family.
Noof, my
Bill
Stardew
worries
is
there
on
aren't enough
GOG.
jobs, living
It's not on
facilities,
Steam.
Social programs designed to meet the needs.
So I don't
of
know
his
if we
son.
can
So I'm wondering,
cross
as
that
president,
way.
Are there specific steps that you would take
It's
to
just-
help people like
I'm
Kyle
getting
become
such
more
bad
integrated into
frame
the
drops in the
workforce and into
game.
their local
It's
communities?
Look,
The United States has made a commitment to treat everybody equally. And that means supporting people with disabilities, both in terms of education and later when they're part of the workforce. That means bringing the resources to bear to make sure that we're treating them fairly in school and after school, to try and integrate them fully and to make them have as full a life as possible. The question we've got here across the board is, can we afford to do the kinds of things that Senator Sanders and Senator Warren are pushing? And the answer is yes. That in fact, what we need to do is to undo the tax breaks that have been given for 2 generations to rich Americans and big corporations. Last year, the top 400 corporations paid an 11% tax. That is absolutely ludicrous.
Yeah.
Could I answer the question?
So
No
the
bueno.
answer on disabilities is a question
No
of
bueno.
focus and money. As so many of
Let's
these questions
get
are, we have a country where the
corporations, these loopholes and other things, tax breaks. Let's not be so frugal with them.
And for the people that serves Americans, including Americans with disabilities, we're going to have to take that back.
Thank you. Mr. Yang, I didn't hear a specific answer from Mr. Steyer. Can you outline specific steps that the government should take to help integrate these young people into the workforce and into their local communities?
I would love it. I have a son with special needs. And to me, special needs is the new normal in this country. How many of you all have a family member or a
Special needs is the new normal? No, Andrew, that's not how that works.
Most hands went up. The fact is, right now, we have to do more for Kyle. Special needs children are going to become special needs adults in many cases. And here's the challenge. We go to employers and say, hey, this special needs person can be a contributor in your workplace, which may be correct, but that's not the point. We have to stop confusing economic value and human value. We have to be able to say to our kids and Kyle that you have intrinsic value because you're an American and you're a human being. We're going to put a freedom dividend of $1,000 a month in everyone's hands, which is going to help families around the country adapt. And then we're going to take this burden off of the communities and off of the schools who do not have the resources to support kids like my son and make it a federal priority, not a local one, so they're not robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Yang. We have to move on. Judy?
No, we haven't. Come on.
Very specific. Senator Warren, 45 seconds.
So, I was a special education teacher, and I loved that work because it gave me a chance to work straight out with people to recognize the worth of every human being. I had 4 to 6-year-olds who were in special ed. And what do we need to do? That's why I have a plan as a special ed teacher to fully fund IDEA. So every child with disabilities will get the full education they need. My housing plan is about investing in more housing across this country, in rural America, in urban America, in small town America, but it's also about making sure that people who want to live independently, people who have disabilities, will have housing available to them. I make a part of my jobs bill that we are going to make sure, as president, I will make sure that the people who want to bid on federal contracts are treating people with disabilities fairly and paying them fairly. You've got to go at it at every part of what we do, because as a nation, this is truly a measure of who we are. We believe in treating these, the least of thy brethren, as people of value, and that is how we make a better America.
Thank you, Senator Warren.
That's why you have social programs already. You have tax
So many
breaks.
important topics to discuss. I want to come to you, Senator Klobuchar, on a question of the judges. President Trump has appointed, as we know, 2 Supreme Court justices, but he's also had confirmed
Orange man bad, guys. I can smell it. I can smell it.
Most of whom are young and could shape American law for decades to come. Some of them you voted for in the Senate, including one who just yesterday joined a ruling to strike down a key part of the Affordable Care Act. Would President Trump's appointees, my question is, make it harder for you as president, for any of you on the stage, to enact your agenda?
Kill the mercy.
Of course, and I want to make it clear that I've opposed many, many judges, and I think everyone will remember what happened at the Kavanaugh hearing. When that nominee went after me, I stood my ground and he had to apologize. So I have been very strong on these judges. As for the judge you just referred to, there was actually the judge that wrote the opinion was a judge that went
Everyone gets
Senate
Airbnb
unanimously with support by Senator Sanders, with support by President Obama, with support by then Senator Kennedy. So I think it is very important when we look at these judges to acknowledge that there are some of these judges that you think are going to be okay, and they aren't. But what would I do as president? I would
Appoint
judges
all women
that
to
are
judge
in the vein
positions
of
because
people like
vagina.
Elena Kagan and Justice Breyer and Sonia Sotomayor, and let's not forget the notorious RBG. That's what I would do.
So women.
And if you look at my
Holy shit, did I call that or what?
Judiciary Committee, look at the judges that I recommended to
'Cause
President
vagina.
Obama. People like Mimi Wright, who's a superstar, and Susan Richard Nelson. Look at who I put in as the first openly gay marshal in the history of the United States. I did that because I knew they were qualified people to take those jobs. And you need to do it not only with the right judges and have that know-how, but you also have to do it right away. That is one thing that we all learned from when President Obama was in. And that was that he was dealing with an economic crisis, and it was hard to do it right away. But we have to immediately start putting judges on the bench to fill vacancies so that we can reverse the horrific nature of these Trump judges.
A follow-up to Mayor Buttigieg. Beyond a
Oh
pledge
no, it's
not
trying to
to
censor
overturn
your.
Roe versus Wade, which
Hold on, I gotta
believe
tab
all
out
of
just
you
for
have
that.
said
There we
would
go.
be part of your decision-making in choosing a nominee to the court.
I guess vagina
Are
is
there other
a
litmus
sensitive
tests
word.
you would apply
Even though
in
I
choosing federal judges?
no, I set it to
Supreme Court is
18
very
plus.
personal for me, because my household, my marriage exists by the grace of a single vote on that body. And yes, it is critical that we have justices who understand that American freedom includes reproductive rights and reproductive freedom. But that's not
You
all.
have reproductive
I
rights
expect
and
an
reproductive
understanding
freedom.
that voting rights are human rights. I expect an understanding that equality is required of us all. And I expect a level of respect for the rule of law that prevents this body from coming to be viewed as just one more partisan battlefield, which is why I will not only appoint judges and justices who reflect this worldview, but also begin moving to reform the body itself, as our country has done at least half a dozen times in its history, so that it is not one more political battlefield every single time a vacancy comes up.
Yamiche?
Senator Sanders, at least 22 transgender people were killed in the United States this year, most of them transgender women of color. Each of you has said you would push for the passage of the Equality Act, a comprehensive LGBTQ civil rights bill. But if elected, what more would you do to stop violence against transgender people?
We need moral leadership in the White House. We need a president who will do everything humanly possible to end all forms of discrimination against the transgender community, against the African American community, against the Latino
So
community,
racist.
and against all
He's
minorities
so
in
racist.
this country. But above and beyond providing the moral leadership of trying to bring our people together, what we also need for the transgender
Let
community
my people
is to
go.
make sure that health care is available to every person in this country, regardless of their sexual orientation or their needs. And that is why I strongly support and have helped lead the effort for a Medicare for all single-payer program, which will provide comprehensive health care to all people, including certainly the transgender community.
Thank you, Senator Sanders. Senator Warren?
The transgender community has been marginalized in every way possible. And one thing that the President of the United States can do is lift up attention, lift up their voices, lift up their lives. Here's a promise I make. I will go to the Rose Garden once every year to read the names of transgender women, of people of color.
I'm sure you do. I'm sure you
I will
do.
make sure that we read their names so that as a nation, we are forced to address the particular vulnerability on homelessness. I will change the rules now that put people in prison based on their birth sex identification rather than their current identification. I will do everything I can to make sure that we are in America that leaves no one behind.
Thank you, Senator Warren.
It pisses me off how grossly out of touch these partisan circle
Vice
jerking
President
spunk
Biden,
muppets.
let's turn now to Afghanistan. Confidential documents
Oh,
published
that
last
was
week
good.
by the Washington Post revealed that for years, senior U.S. officials misled the public about the war in Afghanistan. As Vice
Afghanistan.
President, what did you know?
Afghanistan, you said?
Yes, sir. As Vice President,
Afghanistan.
what did you know
What did you say?
about the state of the war, and do you believe that you are
I'm
honest
old.
with
You
the
can't do
American
that to me.
people about it?
The reason I can speak to this, it's well known, if any of you followed it, my view on Afghanistan. I was sent by the president before we got sworn in to Afghanistan to come back with a report. I said there was no comprehensive policy available, and then I got in a big fight for a long time with the Pentagon because I strongly opposed the nation-building notion we set about. Rebuilding that country as a whole nation is beyond our capacity. I argued from the very beginning that we should have a policy that was based on an anti-terrorism policy with a very small footprint that in fact only had special forces to deal with potential threats from that territory to the United States of America. The first thing I would do as President of the United States of America is to make sure that we brought all combat troops home, entered into a negotiation with the Taliban, but I would leave behind
Taliban.
special forces,
Taliban
small numbers to be
banana.
able to deal with the potential threat unless we got a real good negotiation accomplished to deal with terrorism. That's been my position from the beginning. That's why I think Secretary Gates and some members of the Pentagon weren't happy with it.
Mr. Biden, the question was about your time in the White House, though. And
I'm talking about the White House.
In that Washington Post report, there's a senior national security official who said that there was constant pressure from the Obama White House to produce figures showing the troop surge was working, and I'm quoting from the report here, despite hard evidence to the contrary. What do you say to
Since
that?
2009, go back and look, I was on the opposite side of that with the Pentagon. The only reason I can speak to it now is because it's been published. It's been published thoroughly. I'm the guy from the beginning who argued that it was a big, big mistake to surge forces to Afghanistan, period. We should not have done it. And I argued against it constantly.
Senator Sanders, you have your hand up?
Well, in all due respect to Joe, you're also the guy who helped lead us into the disastrous war in Iraq. What we need to do is, I think, rethink, and the Washington Post piece was very educational. What we need to rethink is the entire war on terror. We have lost thousands of our own men and women, brave soldiers. Hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people have been killed abroad or forced to leave their countries. It is time right now that we bring this world together to try to end these endless wars and address the root causes which are causing these wars.
Senator Sanders, you do often point to your vote against the war in Iraq as evidence of your judgment on foreign policy, but you did vote for the war in Afghanistan, and as recently as 2015,
Oh, man, we
you
crushed
said you
them.
supported a continued U.S. troop presence there. Was that support a mistake?
Well, only one person, my good friend Barbara Lee, was right on that issue. She was the only person in the House to vote against the war in Afghanistan. She was right, I was wrong. So was everybody else in the House.
She
But
was
to
right, I was
answer your
wrong.
question, I don't think you do what Trump does.
So then, based on your okay, so what you're saying, Bernie, is based on your track record,
Or desert your longtime ally
nobody should vote for
like the
you.
Kurds. I think you work with the international community. You remove
Because if you
all
can fuck
troops
up so
over a period of
egregiously,
time, a short period of time.
and then you magically turn around on social media, all your little interns there are constantly talking about how it's immoral, how this administration is so pro-war. Well, no, you're more from your actions are more pro-war than Trump
More
is.
than half the country. So
Look at how hard Trump fought to get out of
those U.S. troops if the country could once
Syria.
again become a haven for terrorists.
and other
We're
places.
going to leave one way
He
or
wants
the
to
other.
bring the
The
troops
question
home.
is to make
He's
sure
not a
we do
war
it
hawk
well
like most
and
of
not for it.
Congress.
And of course, that has to respond to the conditions on the ground and the need for a political settlement.
And really, on this stage,
You know,
him,
the other day
Warren,
I was reunited with somebody that I'd served with.
Biden are probably
thing
the
we
only
were
war hawks up
marveling
there.
at is how long it's been since we left. I thought I was one of the last troops.
It actually makes me sick
when
how
I left
racist
years ago.
Bernie Sanders is.
And we're still there. There may need to be some
Not just the
kind
bigotry
limited
of
special
low
operations
expectations, but he's
intelligence
literally a
capacity.
racist.
The exact same kind of thing, by the way, that we actually
He
had
treats people
in
differently based
Syria,
on their skin.
holding the line before the
On
president
immutable
yanked it out,
characteristics. Sorry, buddy,
leading
that's
to the road
racism.
to chaos.
Textbook.
But what we know is that we cannot go on with these endless wars. And I'm
Oh,
glad that
and
the
you know
name
what
of
I'm
Barbara
gonna
Lee
do?
was mentioned, not only because of
I'm
what
gonna do
she's
that,
talked about years ago.
and I'm gonna
I
do
believe
that.
we had no choice but to go to Afghanistan after 9/11.
Okay,
But
you guys
right
have
now,
wrenches now.
She is one of the leaders of the effort to repeal and replace the authorization for the use of military force, and the folks that I served with deserve that. They deserve the clarity of members of Congress being able to summon the courage to take an up or down vote on whether they ought to be there in the first place. And when I am president, anytime, if I am forced to deploy troops into war, anytime we seek an authorization, it will have a 3-year sunset. So that if there really does have to be a conversation about extending it, it has to be brought to Congress, brought to the American people, and those members of Congress have to take that tough up or down vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tim?
Moving to health care, an issue that voters tell us every day is still the #1 priority for them. Senator Sanders, you've spent plenty of time discussing and defending the merits of your Medicare for All plan, but the reality is that if Republicans retain control of the U.S. Senate, or even if Democrats win back a narrow Senate majority, your plan as constituted probably would not have the votes to pass Congress. So the question, Senator, is if Congress rejects your plan and the American people are looking to you for leadership on this issue, are there smaller, specific measures that you would take immediately to expand coverage and decrease costs as president?
So, Tim, at a time when we're spending twice as much per capita on healthcare as any other nation, when 87 million people are uninsured or underinsured, when 30,000 people are dying each year because they don't get to a doctor when they should, and when 500,000 people are going bankrupt because of the dysfunctional and cruel system that we currently have, you know what? I think we will pass a Medicare for All single-payer system, and I will introduce that legislation in my first week in office. Now, to answer your question, I think when we go out to the American people and tell them that right now we have got to take on the greed and corruption of the pharmaceutical industry, for example, which in some cases charges us 10 times more for the same exact drug as is charged in this country. When the American people understand that Medicare for All expands Medicare to cover home health care, dental care, eyeglasses, and hearing aids, and does it at a cost far, far lower than what some of my opponents are talking about, you know what? We're going to have the American people behind us. We will have Congress behind us.
Thank you, Senator Sanders. Vice President Biden, I'd like to bring you in. You spent an awful lot of time 10 years ago trying to pass a bill far less ambitious than what Senator Sanders is talking about here. Is he being realistic?
I don't think it is realistic. Let me explain why. I introduced a plan to build on Obamacare. To remind everybody, 20 million people got insurance, didn't have it before. All people with pre-existing conditions are able to be covered. That could go on. We didn't get all that we wanted. But now that it's been exposed, that taking it away has such dire consequences, I've added to the Obamacare plan the Biden initiative, which is a public option, Medicare, if you want to have Medicare, for reducing significantly the price of drugs, deductibles, et cetera, by underwriting the plan to a tune of about $750 billion, and making sure that we're able to cover everyone who is in fact able to be covered. Hey, put your hand down for a second, President, okay?
Just waving to you, Joe.
I know.
Saying hello.
I know. So look, it covers everybody, it's realistic, and most importantly, it lets you choose what you want. Here, you have 160 million people negotiated their health care plans with their employer, like many of you have. You may or may not like it. If you don't like it, you can move into the public option that I propose in my plan. But if you like it, you shouldn't have Washington dictating to you. You cannot keep the plan you have.
Thank you, Vice President Biden. Senator Sanders, 45 seconds to respond.
Under Joe's plan, essentially, we retain the status quote.
It's not true.
No,
It is
that's not
exactly
right.
true. Thank you. And by the way, Joe, under your plan, you asked me how we're going to pay for it. Under your plan, I'll tell you how we're paying for it right now. The average worker in America, their family makes $60,000 a year. That family is now paying $12,000 a year for health care, 20% of their income. Under Medicare for All, that family will be paying $1,200 a year because we're eliminating the profiteering of the drug companies and the insurance companies and ending this Byzantine and complex administration of thousands of separate healthcare plans.
Senator Klobuchar, I'm going to come to you.
My name was mentioned.
Yes, I'm going to come to you, but 45 seconds. 45 seconds for Vice President
That's
Biden.
not interrupted. All right, I'm going to interrupt now. It costs $30 trillion. Let's get that straight. $30 trillion over 10 years. Some say it costs $20 trillion. Some say it costs 40. The idea that you're going to be able to save that person making $60,000 a year on Medicare for All is absolutely preposterous. 16% of the American public is on Medicare now, and everybody has a tax taken out of their paycheck now. Tell me, you're going to add 84% more, and there's not going to be higher taxes? At least before he was honest about it.
Joe.
It's going to increase personal taxes. They're going to be...
That's right. We are going to increase personal taxes. But we're eliminating premiums. We're eliminating co-payments. We're eliminating deductibles. We're eliminating all out-of-pocket expenses. And no family in America will spend more than $200 a year on prescription drugs.
Okay.
Senator Klobuchar.
Our plan will save the average worker far more.
Senator Klobuchar, we'd like to hear from you.
Okay.
Yes, Senator, pay premiums
Whoa,
or
guys.
co-payments.
Hey.
First time I did this.
Okay, that's true. I'll say this. First of all, Bernie, I promise when I am your president, I will get our pharmaceutical bills done. And we have worked together on this time and time again, and I agree with you on that. But where I disagree is I just don't think anyone has a monopoly on bold ideas. I think you can be progressive and practical at the same time. That is why I favor a public option, which is a nonprofit option to bring the cost down. And yes, it does bring the cost down immediately for 13 million people, and then we'll expand coverage to 12 million people. But here's the political problem. This fight that you guys are having isn't real. Your fight, Bernie, is not with me or with Vice President Biden. It is with all those bunch of those new House members, not everyone by any means, that got elected in that last election in the Democratic Party. It is with the new governor, Democratic governor of Kentucky, that wants to build on Obamacare. And the way I look at it, if you want to if you want to cross a river over some troubled water, you build a bridge. You don't blow one up. And I think that we should build on the Affordable Care Act.
She mentioned
Senator Klobuchar. Senator Warren, we would like to bring you in.
She took my name in vain.
Oh.
She hurt my feelings. I am crushed. Can I respond?
Never.
My fight,
45 seconds, Senator.
All right. My fight, Amy, is not with the governor of Kentucky. My fight and all of our fights must be with the greed and corruption of the pharmaceutical industry, with the greed and corruption of the insurance industry. These guys last year made $100 billion in profit, and tens of millions of Americans cannot afford to go to a doctor tonight. The day has got to come, and Joe is not talking about it, Amy is not talking about it. The day has got to come, and I will bring that day about when we finally say to the drug companies and the insurance companies, the function of healthcare.
I've had my
is
mic
to provide
muted this
for
entire
all of
time.
our people in a cost-effective way,
I've been
not
talking.
to make massive profits for the drug companies and the
Yeah,
insurance
Cynical
companies.
Lindsay, it is GP in Canada.
We'd like
And I agree,
to bring
Medicare
the
is
discussion.
a terrible
The same question
system.
to you that I posed to Senator Sanders. If Congress
But I think extending it to
a Medicare for All proposal
cover,
the president, are there smaller
and yeah,
specific
you're going to have to
measures
increase
pursue
taxes.
with
I mean, I
bipartisan
don't care one way or the other. That's why I live in Canada, because I chose
on middle-class families.
to want
Last
to,
year,
well,
36
at a
million
certain point in my
Americans
life, I had to
couldn't
choose if I
afford
wanted to
bill
live there, live here,
because
whatever.
They couldn't afford it. And those are people with
And I
health
chose
insurance
because
as
I
well.
like the idea of
People who
socialized
can't do the
medicine, and
co-pays,
as
people who can't do the
many
deductibles,
problems as
people
there
who
are in
find out that
Canada's
the drug
system,
is not covered. So
I
here's
felt
my
it was better
approach.
than nothing.
I want to do the most good I can for the most people as quickly as possible. On day one,
And
I'm
you know,
gonna attack
that
the
part of the
prices
debate is
on
wide open.
commonly
Nobody
used
wants to
drugs
talk about
like
it. Everybody just wants to talk about
EpiPens and
hardline,
insulin, and bring down those prices. The
socialized or
president can
not,
do that. Los
private or
Angeles,
public.
all by herself, and I will do it.
Who's
That's gonna
so?
save families
And then you have
hundreds of
fucking
millions
racist
of
old man
dollars.
Bernie Sanders
And
over
then,
there who's just
in
like,
the first 100 days,
well, yeah, we're gonna
because
raise
I
taxes,
found
we're
a
gonna
way
do
to
everything.
pay for full
Because
health
under
care
a private
coverage for
healthcare system,
everyone without raising taxes
you
on
control where your
middle-class
money
families.
goes.
I'm
You
gonna
are the
make
one who's
available
responsible to
to
set a
people
bit
a
aside
hu-
for
a
medical
full
emergencies,
healthcare
for
coverage
when shit
for
happens, to
135
get private
million
insurance.
people.
You
It
know,
will be at
insurance
no
in case
cost
shit
at all,
happens.
and they can opt into that system.
Thank you,
For
Senator.
others, it will be at a low cost. We have got
Here,
to
we don't
start
necessarily
moving
have a
and move
choice,
fast.
but-
We can do that. We can do that on 50.
I like the
bucks.
system.
Senator.
What can I
Julie.
say? I'd rather
We are
it than
coming
nothing
to the
at
end
this
of our
point.
time. A lot of hands up. We apologize for that. But in the spirit of the season, I'd like to ask each one of you, is there someone else among these candidates that you have two options. One, a candidate
That too.
from whom you would ask forgiveness for something maybe that was said tonight or another time.
Oh, Lordy.
Or a candidate to whom you
forgiveness.
would like to give a gift. And I'm going to start with you, Mr. Yang.
Wow.
The Junkrat, Diva, TP going top left.
We could do a labor action and just all go on strike on this one, Andrew.
Thank you.
I don't think I have much to ask forgiveness for. You all can correct me on this.
Junkrat's just like crushed behind
In terms
the
of
floor
a
in
gift,
a car loving
Elizabeth has done me the honor of starting to read my book.
Yes.
I would love to give each of you a copy of my book.
Give him a copy of the book.
Oh dear.
It's about how we're going through the greatest economic transformation in our country's history, the fourth industrial revolution. It is grinding up our communities, and DC is out to lunch on this. Our media organizations are not covering it adequately. I wrote a book on it, and if you like data, this book is for you. This goes for the people at home too, if you like data and books.
Mayor Buttigieg asked.
Oh, shut up.
Mayor Buttigieg ask forgiveness or give a gift?
First of all, I love data and books, so I think we should all be excited about this. And come to think of it, I should probably send my book around more too. Look,
Your publisher will thank you.
I think all of us want the same thing at the end of the day. We know what a gift it would be to the future and to the country.
There's Tim
for
Turts on the top
literally
right.
Anybody
Like
up
in the
here
little hallway
to become
outside the
president of the United States compared to what we got. And we got to remember, I don't know how many now, we're up to 25 something have run for president in the Democratic Party. The moment we got a nominee, the 24 who aren't that nominee are going to have to rally around the one who does. Let's make sure there's not too much to ask for forgiveness for by the time that day comes.
Senator Warren.
I will ask for forgiveness. I know that sometimes I get really worked up. And sometimes I get a little hot. I don't really mean to.
Don't pick those snipers if you wait for them to push in. You
It's
can
when you
just kill
do
them when they
100,000 selfies with people.
Again with the
You hear enough
selfies. Fuck.
stories
Shut
about
up.
people who are really down.
Hey, fellow kids. I take selfies.
You know, I met someone just last week in Nevada who said that he has diabetes and that he has access to a prescription because he's a veteran.
He's
But
got
his
the
sister
beatus.
has diabetes and his daughter has diabetes, and they simply can't afford insulin. So the three of them spend all of their time figuring out how to stretch one insulin prescription among three people. When I think about what we could do if we get a majority in the House, a majority in the Senate, and get back the White House, we could make this country work
Double
for
Ferris
people
thing.
like that man, and that's why I'm in this fight.
Vice President Biden.
I think everyone up here in this stage and those who are not on the stage who've run, we owe them because they're all pushing for the same exact thing. You're not the only one that does selfies, Senator. I've done thousands of them. And the crew that follows me can tell you, there's not one line I go through that I don't have at least a half a dozen people come up and hug me and say, can you help me? I just lost my daughter 10 days ago. Can you help me? Tell me I'm going to be okay. Can you help me? I just lost, and they go and lay out their problems. My wife and I have a call list of somewhere between 20 and 100 people that we call at least every week or every month to tell them I'm here. I give them my private phone number. They keep in touch with me. The little kid who says I can't talk. What do I do? I have scores of these young women and men who I keep in contact with. And the reason I would give everyone here a gift is they want to do something like I do of making their lives better, because there's a lot of people who are hurting very, very, very badly.
Senators.
They're hurting.
Senator,
I'm
Senator,
hurting.
Forgiveness or gift.
Well, I can give out any one of 4 books that I wrote. But I think the gift that all of us need to give to the American people is a very, very different vision of the reality of the Trump administration. And the vision that we need to bring forth is to create a government and a nation based on love and compassion, not greed and hatred. We need a vision which says that in our great country, all of our people should be able to earn a decent standard of living, have health care, have the ability to send their kids to college regardless of their income. So we need a new vision which brings our people together around an agenda that works for all, not the Trump vision of dividing us up.
Orange man bad, guys. I can't drink right now.
That's my vision.
Senator Klobuchar.
Well, I would ask for forgiveness anytime any of you get mad at me. I can be blunt, but I am doing this because I think it is so important to pick the right candidate here. I do. I think when you see what's going on around the country, yes, it's the economic check that
you are possibly the worst candidate.
So well pointed out on this stage. But there's something else going on here, and it is a decency check. It is a values check. It is a
use your moral superiority.
When you see people, and we've all had this happen, that come to our meetings and say, you know, yeah, I voted for Donald Trump, but I don't want to do it again because I want my kids to be able to watch the president on TV and not mute the TV. We have to remember as Democrats, and if I get worked up about this, it's because I believe it so much in my heart, that we have to bring people with us and not shut them out. That is the gift we can give America in this election.
Mr. Steyer.
So, look, this is the holiday season. And what I'm hearing from every single one of these candidates is that they've gone around the United States, and what they've seen from this administration and what they've seen from the Republican Party is cruelty towards the people of the United States for money. So when I think about the gift that I'd like to give, and I've seen that too. I mean, I think it starts with cruelty when children are born, and it goes right through life into pre-K, education, health care, a living wage. There is cruelty to working people. There is cruelty to seniors. And so the gift that I'd like to give everyone on this stage, which was the original question, is the gift of teamwork. Because the question up here is, how are we together going to change
He hasn't had much time, but he hasn't been 100% horrible. He's got a lot of bad ideas. I can't even remember the guy's
name. For the people of the United States together, not by tearing each other down, but by supporting each other and by realizing that what we stand for is the true value of America. And as a team, that's how we're going to do it. And as Americans, we're going to come together to stand up for the original values: freedom, equality, justice, teamwork.
We are going to take a very short break. That does conclude our questions tonight here at Loyola Marymount University. We'll be back in just 2 minutes to hear the candidates' closing statements.
I don't think we need to hear the closing statements. I think I'm just gonna end it here because that's the meat and potatoes of it all, and they're just gonna reiterate their talking points, and it's just not gonna be. I mean, this was painful enough as is, so we might as well just end it here. Thanks, guys, for popping in and saying hello and having some laughs with me. Let's do it again sometime, okay?